At 22 minutes to 7, this is Morning Express time for us to look at the dailies. Joining me to do that is Bernard Wakoli. Thank you for joining us this morning and taking your time. Karibu sana. All right, we start as usual with the headlines where we have the Standard right here. And it is still on examinations. And as you can see on the background, there is what, well, is a learning center for some, but unsung heroes of KCPE exams. We'll come into that in just a short while. Let's move on to the Daily Nation, where we have still matters to do with examinations, and that's KCPE. To be specific, how we did it. Stars reveal success secrets. So that's another, still to do with education matters. Let's look at the Star, where the headlines is Kalonzo planning to return to Parliament? Matters politics, and of course, the question there being after the ruling given by the Supreme Court. Let's go back to the Standard, where we have now matters to do with education and unsung heroes. This is basically highlighting some students who have learned or who have had to go through their education and do their exams in very, very dire straits. And, you know, looking at the classroom right here, there are those, first of all, the facilities do not favor them at all. There are others who've had to do exams in the midst of war.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike, for having me again. I think this year's examination, in comparison with the previous year's performance was good. But as you have said, there are a number of pupils who sat the examinations in very difficult conditions, notwithstanding the political instability that we had of general elections. Then also we had the influx of many people, many students or pupils registering for enrolling for schools following the free primary education. And also there's a lack of proper investment in the infrastructural development of schools. We have some pupils who sat their examination in very deplorable conditions. When you look at that structure, it's very sad. So I think the Ministry of Education and the government should put more investment in the development of infrastructure. Just to add on that, when you look at the Jubilee Manifesto on education, the previous year, 2013, they talked about equipping primary schools with the IT, computers for pupils. But I think that money would have been invested more in developing the infrastructures, having more teachers recruited for pupils to balance, to bring the teacher-pupils ratio, and also ensuring that students learn in a conducive environment. But all that said and done, I think this year's performance was splendid.
It's quite commendable. And of course, the other thing that you also had to look at, given the deplorable condition of some of their classrooms and learning institutions. In fact, there are some who do not even have classrooms. We've had stories where people are learning under trees. Also bring in the question of how fair it is, even when we come up with the grading system and say this school is number 1, this is number 2, because their conditions of learning are not the same. It's not a level playing field.
You know, the coming to force of the devolution in Kenya after the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution, we expected that some key elements of, of service delivery, which touch on local, on common mwananchi, are going to be devolved. But when you look at the education sector, it's only pre-primary, the kindergarten and nursery that were devolved. And as such, county governments are not investing so much in the infrastructures. But that's an area that government had neglected for, successive governments had neglected for many years. So I think it's high time that the government should actually invest so much in the infrastructure, ensure that pupils learn in conducive environment. And also when it comes to grading, it's not, it won't be fair to compare students learning or people's learning in this environment with somebody learning in a very,
with all the
plush,
and,
private school. But because the examination is standardized, so I think it also gives a challenge to those pupils who are in very, very posh schools and are not performing well. What excuse do they have that will make them not perform as compared to pupils from mostly public schools in remote rural areas like marginalized areas like Turkana, We have students who don't even attend classes because of banditry and all those kind of things.
All right. And, well, if it is an encouragement to anyone, I remember reading an article that was actually giving and showing figures and statistics of who is who in most countries. And what was coming out clearly is that majority of those who've made it in life, you know, in terms of becoming CEOs, businessmen, normally are from a very humble background and are forced to work extra hard because things are not easy and you need to get out of that cycle. But there you go. But still on education matters. Let's look at the Nation headlines because we're still looking at education and how they did it, how we did it. This is basically students coming out to give their secrets of success. So this would be a good read, especially for those who possibly have got examinations coming up. And I think all of us in life do have examinations, but also very encouraging to see the young ones coming out with formulas of what has made them successful.
I listened to the lady who was
Golden,
who topped in the national examination, and listening to how she was encouraging fellow pupils and you know, and talking about the disability that being disabled does not mean that you are unable to perform, and also looking at how the environment in which she was learning, you know, stereotypes that come with a person with a disability and all those things that are associated with the education in rural areas. So you realize that she talked of something being, of somebody being, you know, knowing yourself, realizing yourself and knowing what you can do.
Self-aware.
Everybody has a capability, everybody has his own talent or her talent. And if you maximize on your ability, maximize on your strength. In the projects we talk about having smart, is called what? Strength. Analysis, SWOT analysis,
strength, weaknesses,
where you have to analyze your strength, weakness, and you know other threats and opportunities. So the moment you realize those SWOT, you do yourself and have a SWOT analysis on yourself, then you can do anything.
Absolutely. And well, just to note that examinations don't end as soon as you finish KCPE. It seems like life is generally just about exams, one or the other. Let's go back to the Standard and look at page 3, moving away from education now and looking at developments that are coming up out of what we had in the elections. And now NASA turns to ICC and other bodies over killing. Now this is NASA basically saying that there are extrajudicial killings that are being carried out by the government through the police service or the police force, depending on which way you want to look at it. And well, interesting to see that angle basically coming in.
Yeah, we saw reports emanating from the Raila's trip in Tanzania, and we were told that he held meetings with the other regional leaders from Rwanda, Uganda, and Tanzania. I think he's doing a lot of consultation, and as we speak, we are also told that Moses Wetangula is out of the country. Probably he traveled to Rwanda. So I think Raila is doing consultations to see how he can maximize on opportunities that present themselves. And when you look at the chaos that were experienced in post-election, we had cases where police were using so much force to disperse crowds or to control the people, young people expressing themselves. You know, there are freedoms in this country, and when the police are charged with the responsibility of ensuring that people express their freedoms within the confines of the Constitution, then they don't need to use so much force. A number of people have lost their lives, and we really regret at this moment in time that Kenyans are still losing their lives in line of demonstrations, picketing, and all those things. So I think the police force or the police service should come up with the possible means of ensuring that when they are controlling crowds, the crowds are controlled with minimal, you know, forces, and also people are not able to lose their lives.
They don't lose their lives. So we'll see how that will develop as we carry on. Let's look at the cartoon on page 14 of the Standard this morning. And the cartoon this morning giving us, normally, the reason why I like to look at the cartoon is mainly it gives us a humorous angle, but to a very serious issue. And this is what it is calling, once we get there, the four arms of government, African style. But of course, the fact that it's African style, then it leaves a lot to be desired. And well, the four arms of government start with the judiciary. They go to parliament, then the executive. And this executive right here, it is important to note that is Mugabe. And the fourth is the military.
The military, yeah. I think when you look at this cartoon and you do comparison with what happened in Zimbabwe, you realize that now the military is controlling the other three arms. You know, it's supposed to be three arms of government. The military is not part of, the governance structure. But you know, when Zimbabweans or the military allowed itself to interfere with the normal running of the government, then that's why we have a fourth arm. And this is something, as I said yesterday, this is something that should not be emulated or copied by some of these African leaders. Because when you start allowing military to intervene in a normal succession squabbles or normal political arena, then you are going to have it rough. And it's high time that we deviate from this process, strengthen our institutions, strengthen judiciary, parliament, and executive. Let those arms perform their duties. And if one of the arms is not performing well, then there are checks and balance to ensure that all the three arms of government are performing and delivering their services.
All right, and before we finish with the Standard, you've also got the Pull-Out magazine every Thursday, which is called Hashtag. And if you look at page 8 of Hashtag, it has an interesting article there. Let's see whether we have it. Page 8 of the Hashtag, where we have our very own Dr. Mercy Korir giving us, well, some insight into what happens. I think that's going the opposite direction. But there you go. Do get yourself a copy of the Standard, and you certainly will be able to get a good read. Let's now move on to the Daily Nation, where we've already looked at the headline. And the headline, basically, for the benefit of those who might be joining us now, is how we did it. And this is mainly just giving us the secrets of success from the eyes of the KCPE students who managed to be glowing and basically enjoying themselves as they, got glowing marks.
Yeah, they just give us some examples in life that there's no shortcut in life. You just have to work hard as an individual and aim at realizing your goals. If previously we have had cases of people, having shortcuts by stealing exams. There was so much of exam linkages. But at this time round, I didn't experience or I didn't hear anybody complaining of leakages. There were cases where there were arrests, but at the high school level. At primary level, I think the exam was administered in accordance with the rules and laws. And Matiang said what these pupils got, they deserved them. There were no shortcuts.
No shortcuts. Yeah. It's what they had studied for, and they deserved every mark that they got. Congratulations to all of them. Still on matters education, let's look at page 9 of the Nation, where we have, again, there's always the battle between public and private schools. And according to this article, only 7 public schools in the top 100 ranking. So again, of course, the question of free education coming in and the quality of the education. We do know that according to the government, they are offering to have free education. According to Jubilee Manifesto, they have promised that even secondary education is going to be free come January. But the question now remains on the quality of the education.
The quality of education, but I don't think if this ranking was done in accordance with the performance, because when you compare the public school, the condition under which public schools conduct the education, in comparison with the private schools, they are totally different. I think they should be separated in terms of ranking, because in most cases we realize that a private school registers less pupils, let's say 20, and most of them get almost above 350 marks. But public schools, we have cases like DB, Bungoma DB, which had a total population in a school is almost 3,000 and something. So average per class is 80. and you expect that class to perform as the same with a private school, which has only 20 pupils in a class. I think we should look at the performance of individual pupils, and this year's results has proved that there were more successes, stories from public schools. We have cases where children or pupils have performed extremely well from public schools compared to private schools. So the grading and average will come. You'll realize private schools perform better when the average is done. But still, we need more investment in our education sector, especially public schools.
All right, let's finish off with the cartoon. It's on page 14. And this, again, is focusing on Africa as a whole, but of course brought about by Zimbabwe, which has been in the limelight, I think, from last Wednesday, from the time that the military stepped in to, well, ensure that, according to them, that they were saying they were going to root out criminals. But of course, over time, we have managed to see
I think the case of Zimbabwe, and we keep on talking about it, is a case that is very unique, where we have this excitement about a coup. Then a coup is not realized. Then we have a president resigning and is granted immunity, because those were some of the negotiations that were going on. And still the power goes to his party. You know, we'll have had a case where we have the opposition, you know, or somebody independent having the president of the caretaker government. But here we are just returning power to the same people. Because when you look at Mnangagwa, has been the right-hand man of Mugabe
for a long
time. And most of the heinous acts that were perpetuated by Mugabe, actually it's claimed that it is Mnangagwa who was planning.
Yeah, he's the planner and the executor, the one who would actually make sure that those plans go.
So I can see Museveni is also getting worried, according to the cartoon. That is now next to the gallery. And then we have Al-Bashir is on the queue. Then the third one, I don't know who is that.
Well, it might be Kagame, but you can't see clearly. But there you go. That's basically what the cartoon says there this morning. And that's where we wind up our newspaper review this morning. Thank you, Benard, for joining us this morning. And do get yourself a copy of the dailies. There's a lot more in them, but we've just given you tips and bits of what is in the dailies today. For now, we want to take a short break. We'll be back with more stories making headlines, but also today being Thursday, we have our focus on the state of the nation. And there has been a call for dialogue. But what is this? What is entrenched in this dialogue? When the leaders talk about inclusivity, what really is inclusivity? Have we had governments that have been able to govern in the right way from a governance perspective? So that's going to be our State of the Nation debate this morning. Do stay with us right here on Morning Express. As we take a short break, we'll be right back.